The EU's SAFE programme is a planned set of loans to be taken out by EU member states to invest in military modernisation. The catch, however, is that the money may only be invested inside the European Union. Due to the size of the loans, particularly the one being taken out by Poland, totalling an immense 40 billion euros, this would significantly diminish the money EU countries could spend on top-of-the-line weapons from outside Europe, most notably from the United States. This is bad enough considering the gap in quality between US and EU weapons systems, but the protectionist angle of the SAFE loans could drive yet another wedge into EU-US relations, at a time when Europe is under more military pressure than it has faced in decades. Programs like SAFE hurt American interests, which in turn could weaken the transatlantic alliance, warn Andrew Puzder, US Ambassador to the European Union, and Matthew Whitaker, US Ambassador to NATO, in a joint commentary posted on the Politico website. The United States has expressed concerns about how EU defence initiatives like Security Action for Europe, SAFE, and the European Defence Industry Programme, EDIP, restrict market access for American companies. Such exclusionary measures undermine our collective defence by limiting competition, stifling innovation, and depriving these companies of the orders they need to maintain production at the levels required to meet our allies' needs. According to the US ambassadors, such policies undermine common transatlantic defence. EU policymakers considering the future of defence cooperation face a clear choice: pursue policies that restrict market access and fragment the defence sector, or foster an environment of openness, competition and innovation. The latter approach supports our collective security, readiness, resilience and cost-effective investment, benefiting taxpayers, workers and service members on both sides of the Atlantic. The Pentagon is also responding. In an official statement to the European Commission, it warns that EU preferences for European arms purchases will be met with a strong response from the United States, according to Politico. This is interesting in several respects, because while it is understandable that the United States is also guided by economic interests, in this case, the interests of Americans' arms manufacturers, it is difficult not to read this as a warning about the durability of the transatlantic alliance, in this case, the North Atlantic Alliance. Back in December, Politico, citing reports from 3 NATO diplomats, also wrote about the strong reaction of US Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau. He openly criticized European NATO allies for, quote, putting their own defense industry ahead of American arms suppliers. The absence of US Secretary of State Marco Rubio at a recent meeting of NATO foreign ministers, something that has happened only a handful of times in alliance history, sparked concern among EU and former NATO officials. That grew to alarm after his deputy Christopher Landau berated EU countries for prioritizing their own defense industries instead of continuing to buy from the US. Marco Rubio's absence from the meeting is an important diplomatic signal that the United States takes the matter very seriously. This is the first time in more than 20 years that the highest-ranking US diplomat has been absent from a NATO ministerial meeting. This could have a very negative impact on the transatlantic relations, because everyone is aware of the geopolitical situation in the world. Those who do not maintain a solid alliance with the United States have no chance of defending themselves in the event of war. The Americans look at things from the perspective of their own interests, of course, but they also look at them from the perspective of global security. The fact that Poland and other countries will be limited in terms of territory and geography when it comes to purchases is not good for either the United States or those countries. However, weakening the role of the United States in Europe would serve German interests at the expense of smaller member states. There are consistent attempts to exclude Americans from Europe, because only then Germany can become a regional hegemon. However, they do not want to be too open about the idea because of their own immediate interests. Germany is not participating in the SAFE program because it wants to buy American equipment and does not want to make enemies with the United States, so they are using Poland under Donald Tusk's government to do their dirty work for them. Poland is the largest borrower from the SAFE program in the European Union. Curiously, the German ambassador personally supervised the Polish parliament's work on the bill on this matter, and politicians from Poland's ruling coalition, led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, are enthusiastic about the adoption of the program, of which the United States is skeptical. The SAFE program is a transatlantic project supported by the US and NATO. Europe must do more for security and spend on the strength of its armies. Poland is a strong country in the EU, is building a new perspective for the future. Let's choose a great and secure Poland.
Kawa nie wyklucza herbaty.
Coffee does not exclude tea. That is, Poland's participation in the SAFE program does not exclude our close cooperation with allies outside the European Union, for example with the United States, Korea, Norway or the United Kingdom. SAFE money itself, which will be a large chunk of Polish military expenditure, may only be spent within the European Union. That's why Poland's opposition warns that the program may end up hurting Polish national interests. One of the key objectives of Polish foreign policy, understood in such a way that it should serve the Polish nation and Polish sovereignty, is precisely to prevent these kind of plans. This is also because, as a frontline country bordering Russia and Belarus, Poland requires fast and reliable defensive capability. And as can be seen from the contacts established after 2021, the Americans are able to deliver top-of-the-line weapons reliably on quick deadlines. Europe is only catching up technologically in the arms industry. It wants to do what America is already doing, but at the same time, America is already developing new types of weapons, such as the famous discombobulator, used during the operation to capture Nicolas Maduro, which effectively incapacitated the Venezuelan dictator's bodyguards. We must purchase the highest quality equipment, and it must be compatible with the equipment used by the strongest army in the world, which has the strongest position in the North Atlantic Alliance. After all, American troops are stationed in Poland, and it will be good for all our equipment to be compatible. There is another equally important argument. SAFE not only undermines the alliance with the United States, which is crucial from the point of view of Poland's raison d'etat, but also directly threatens Polish national sovereignty. The SAFE loans contract has a conditionality clause, according to which the borrowed money may be frozen if the borrower country breaks European standards on human rights, the rule of law, and others. This resembles the conditionality of the EU's post-COVID recovery fund, whose Polish portion was held essentially as financial blackmail against Poland until Poland's right-wing government was voted out and replaced by a more pro-EU alternative, the current government led by Donald Tusk. The SAFE loans money could easily be leveraged as an even stronger form of economic blackmail, allowing the EU's political establishment to extract any number of otherwise unthinkable conditions, like Poland adopting the euro or enacting a policy of mass third world immigration. Such ideas were floated in Poland in the past, but were at every turn decisively rejected by voters. After Poland's Senate passed the SAFE bill, it will now be taken up again by the Tusk-controlled parliament. It will then go to the desk of President Nawrocki, and it will be up to him to decide whether Poland will agree to the loan.
And they're back. All Polish Olympians are now back in the country. After 2 weeks of sporting competition, they can finally breathe a sigh of relief because the 25th Winter Olympics in Milan and Cortina have come to an end. All good things must come to an end. Our representatives brought 4 medals to Poland, but it's not about the number. It's about the heart they put into their preparation and participation. Late in the evening, joy and euphoria reigned at Warsaw's Chopin Airport. Speed skaters, their coach, and the head of the Polish Olympic Mission returned to Poland. And so did he, the Olympic silver medalist in men's 10,000-meter competition in speed skating. It makes me want to cry. I'm really proud that you were able to cheer me on, watch me, and now the most important thing is that I'm home. Our silver medalist has no time to rest. He has already announced that he is returning to training, as he plans to repeat his success in 4 years' time. I really want to fight for gold. We know what we need to work on, so I believe it will happen. For many, returning home is a time to reflect on the Olympics. I don't think these Olympics were successful for me. The only thing that went well was the finish with the American in the 1,000 meters. The Olympics, which are now behind us, were successful in terms of the medals won by our representatives. But sport is also, and perhaps above all, about emotions. I learned these emotions because they are not easy. The Olympics are difficult competitions, and they are difficult events because there are so many things that happen for the first time, and the emotions that show up in those moments are simply new. sport has unpredictable twists and turns. Everything can change in a second. And that's why we love it. One of the heroes of the games was undoubtedly Kacper Tomaszak, winner of 3 medals, silver on the normal hill and bronze on the large hill, and together with Paweł Wąsek, silver in the team event. Tomaszak became the youngest Polish medalist in the history of the Winter Olympics. The Kings of the Skies have already received congratulations from Polish President Karol Nawrocki. It is undoubtedly time to applaud their success. Our medal-winning trio, including Kacper Tomaszak, Paweł Wąsek, and Władimir Semiruni, now have a busy time ahead of them. The path I am on is the right one. Multiple medalists and runner-up admitted that he will not rest on his laurels, and that success only motivates him more, especially with the Junior World Championships ahead of him. My only goal is to win a medal. I'm not focused on it having to be gold, but it has to be a medal. I will improve my jumps and focus on that. It is worth emphasizing that the successes of Polish athletes are primarily due to their hard work and determination. But going to the Olympics would not be possible without the support of private sponsors, because they cannot count on financial assistance from the state. Our budget has been cut. For the first time in history, the Polish Olympic Committee sent our athletes to the Olympic Games without funds from the state budget or from state-owned companies. When I looked at the posts of some people, especially members of parliament, who boasted about how well organized our athletes' trip to the Olympics was, I just wanted to add that I don't know if they realize that this was provided by private entrepreneurs and private companies. Despite the difficulties the athletes faced, for every smile they brought to our faces, for every tear of emotion, we thank you. You are all medalists.
Official ceremonies, wreaths and speeches in Kiev. For the state, it is the anniversary of the beginning of the heroic resistance. For thousands of families, it is another day without those who died. In homes and cemeteries, the war has the faces of specific people: fathers, husbands, sons, mothers, wives and daughters. Their heroism is recorded in reports, sometimes honored with posthumous rewards. But for all of them, it is above all a hole in their hearts. During the mission in which he died, my father saved 47 other people at the cost of his own life. Very heroic, but very painful. There are dozens, hundreds, thousands of such stories. There are no unheroic deaths here. That is why, for their loved ones, the meaning of this war is not measured by the map of the front, but by whether the sacrifice of their loved ones will bring a future to the next generation. The boys did not die in vain. I strongly believe that they were on their way to victory. We will wait for that victory, so that we have a future, so that children are born again, run and enjoy life, and do not sit in shelters and cry because of grief, pain and loss. In state celebrations, Ukrainian authorities emphasize that despite 4 years of fighting, Russia has failed to break either the country or its people. Putin has not achieved his goals. He has not broken the Ukrainians. He has not won this war. We have saved Ukraine, and we will do everything to ensure peace and justice for it. European leaders and NATO representatives have arrived in Kiev. The visit is intended to show solidarity and remind everyone that the outcome of the war remains crucial for the security of all of Europe. Ceremonies commemorating the beginning of the Ukrainian nightmare were held in many cities across Western Europe.
We gathered this morning to mark yet another terrible anniversary. 4 years of unforgiving war. We remember today and every day what Ukraine has endured. But while we pay tribute to those lost and those suffering, we also stand in hope, inspired by 4 years of unbroken resistance.
Since the early days of the conflict, Ukraine has received financial, military and humanitarian assistance from the West. One of the key countries supporting Kiev from the outset has been Poland, which has taken in millions of refugees, provided military equipment and remains one of the main logistical channels for humanitarian aid and military support. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is a serious threat to the security of all of Europe. History teaches that ignoring Russia's imperial ambitions has always led to tragedy. The democratic world must remain united in the face of such challenges. We expect an end to actions that destabilize the region. We respect the courage of the people who stand up for freedom every day.
Whatever Putin tells himself and his people, Russia is not winning. And we must shift the narrative into that place with greater force and determination. And just to underscore that point, in the last year, Russia has suffered 500,000 casualties to gain and occupy less than 1% extra of Ukrainian territory. That is not a country that 4 years into a conflict is winning.
On the front lines, the situation remains very difficult and dynamic for the defenders. In many places, the fighting consists of slowly wearing down the enemy. At the same time, talks about the possible start of peace negotiations are continuing, although the official positions of both sides still differ significantly.
In terms of the distance between the negotiating positions of the two sides, the Americans, if you were to believe them at face value in terms of what they're putting out as commentary, is that the gap is narrowing. It's narrowing to a few difficult-to-resolve issues, some of which we can well assume would relate to the territorial status of the Donbass region. But I think the reality is that if you were to ask the two sides, the answer might be very different. And in particular, Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, has put out a number of tweets that have indicated that there is still a lot of daylight between the two sides, between his negotiating team and the Russian negotiating team.
That is why the Ukrainian army is training more soldiers, considering the prospect of a long-term conflict. For many young people, the decision to join the army is made quietly, often without grand declarations and without informing their loved ones. The first time, I wanted to join the same unit as my brother. He made sure I didn't go. The second time, my family talked me out of it. And the third time, as you can see, no one talked me out of it. I just didn't tell anyone. I went, and that was it. For many of these soldiers, the choice is clear. As I tell my parents, either they kill us all or we kill them. I don't see any other option. 4 years of war have changed the daily lives of millions of civilians. And although it is unimaginable in the shadow of air raid sirens and constant danger, life goes on. People work, study and try to plan for the future, even if they don't know whether they have a future. I see that the front line is held for 4 years. Regardless of what people say about the government one way or another, I see that even though there may be corruption and various problems, people are working and trying to do everything they can to end this war. I don't want to lose hope. If we've endured 4 years, I want to believe that we can endure more, because there is simply no other option. 4 years of war have changed Ukraine, but they have not broken those who live there. For the families of the fallen, young recruits and millions of civilians, the future still means one thing: surviving another day and believing that the sacrifice was not in vain. Because for them, this war is not history or politics. It is their life, their everyday reality.